Over again, Wild.
Oh, there we go. There we go. We've got the live sign.
Good day, everyone. Charles Froelick here from Froelick Gallery and Wilder Schmaltz, Associate Director of the Gallery. We want to welcome you to an hour-long approximate conversation about Rick Bartow and his ravens. Rick is someone who we're very close to and had many shows with, and this is a special feature of 15 pieces that we have on display in the front room of the gallery and on the website. And they're only crows. They're all ravens, crows, corvids. And I know some of you have some differences and will split hairs about the difference between a raven and a crow, and Rick would reprimand me for not knowing every detail on that, but we're just going to dive in. And so I want to introduce Wilder Schmaltz. He's been with the gallery 10 years. And Wilder is very much an expert and very close to all the artists we work with, and was very close with Bartow. Bartow admired Wilder very much. And so it's a joy to get to work with Wilder and have him at the gallery. I know all the artists and all of our clients love working with Wilder. So whoever hasn't met him, I hope you'll come in to meet him and get to work with him. And Wilder has a few things to start out.
Thank you, Charles. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning as we're talking about Rick. As we are broadcasting and located here in Portland, it's important to acknowledge that we're here and our presence is on stolen and unceded land where Multnomah, Molalla, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Kalapuya, Chinookan bands, Tumwater, and Wasco peoples traditionally lived. And we're thankful and love our relations that we have with the indigenous communities who are here now, who are from all over, Native Arts and Culture Council, and so many wonderful individuals and organizations and artists who are such a part of the community here in Portland.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we want to celebrate all of the artists in Portland, and we're especially blessed with a really vibrant community of indigenous artists that have been here for hundreds, thousands of years, but the contemporary artists that are living here and thriving and come from all areas of the Western Hemisphere, really. So it's pretty exciting to be in Portland. I feel like we're at a crossroads. The Columbia River and the Willamette River have always been a trading ground, and Portland is still that today. It's a place where ideas are exchanged, artists collaborate together. It's a real exciting place to live, and I think Portland feels vibrant, and it's a tough time right now in the whole world, and Portland has been, we're vocal here. We've been expressive out on the streets, and that's exciting to me because we don't sit back and just take things quietly like, oh, well, whatever. So our artists have been in the streets, and our artists are in the studios too, making incredible art. So if you haven't visited Portland, I hope you will, because it's exciting. And I think what we do and the artists we represent are exciting. And among them, Rick Bartow.
Yes.
Wilder, I think you had a question for me.
Oh, yeah, Charles. So we have a lot to to say about Rick Bartow. Of course, he left us so much to work with and think about and consider every day. But it's not always easy to talk about Rick. I know you and Rick had a long association, and not just a transactional professional relationship, but a real true friendship. And that started in 1992 when you were working at Jameson Thomas Gallery. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got to know Rick and a little bit about him?
Great. I'll keep this brief. Try to. We're here today to talk about the crows, Rick's ravens and crows. And that's why we started out with that clip of the crows flocking in front of the gallery in the North Park blocks. Rick, I came to Portland in late 91, and started working at William Jameson's gallery in March of 92, and met Rick soon after. And it was incredible to get to learn about Rick's artwork and then to work with him and William Jameson. And after William Jameson's sad passing in 1995, I opened my gallery, and Rick was the first solo show at the gallery in October of 95. So another little tangent is that this month is our 25th anniversary month for Froelick Gallery. And Rick has been a foundational artist, but we represent so many incredible artists that have been there from the beginning. Susan Soybert, Kevin Kadar, Terrell James. We have a lot of artists that have been with us for many years. So it's a long list. And I hope the visitors will not just look at Rick's work on the website, but everybody. Okay, so I started working with Rick when he was, his career had already been launching. William Jameson started bringing Rick's work to the art fairs around the country, and there were curators around the country like Margaret Archuleta and Truman Lowe and Kathleen Ash Milby that were including Rick in shows in San Francisco, in Phoenix, in New York, in Washington, not in Washington, in New York, in Chicago, Jan Cicero, and Rutgers Barclay Gallery, and formerly in New Mexico. They were all giving Rick attention, and it was an exciting time to enter and to see Rick starting to blossom. So I think I really want to focus on the artwork in this show.
Yeah, yes.
We chose the exhibit is, I know, I want to introduce some more staff members. Are we ready yet to talk about?
Yes, I think we are, yes.
Special guests.
Yes.
Okay, we have, I want to announce or introduce, we have some staff that are not here, not online today, but Kyle Miller is our preparator, and he works with us on Tuesdays. So if you come in to see the gallery on a Tuesday, or maybe if you have something extra large that we're installing in your house, you'll meet Kyle Miller. He's fantastic. Yeah. And then Stacy Fletcher, our accountant, and she's an incredible art expert. She's lived in Portland forever. She's born and raised here. And then the newest staff member is Kathy Denning, and she's a graduate of University of Oregon with a master's in art history. She started in February. And Kathy will introduce you to our special rock star, Ziggy Stardust. So if you come in, okay, holding up a sign that says vote. Yes, please, everybody, get out and vote. So Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. So good.
Okay.
What is starstruck?
Yeah, I know. when Bowie walks in the room, everybody sighs.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I'm gonna share the screen with there. I'm going to get, there we go. So this is our website. So what we're really trying to get around to, everybody who's trying to follow this crazy stream of thought, is that we have an exhibit up in the front room of the gallery. You could come visit and see the works in person, or just even stand out in front at a time that we're closed. We have the front room well lit, so at night you can see the work pretty well, but we really hope you'll make an appointment to come in and see it in person. Rick Bartow is in the front room, and Chris Hargis, we should say and recognize, is the featured artist alongside Rick. And Chris's work comprises about 16 pieces, drawings. Rick and Chris Hargis were good friends as well. And Chris will, we'll have a conversation with Chris on first Thursday in November. So Chris will be able to, we'll feature his work then on the broadcast. So if you're looking at our website and you want to look more at the work closely, or look more closely, you can go to the Rick's artist page, which I'm clicking there. And then you'll see here's overview, works, video, exhibitions. There are several places that you can go to look at a lot of Rick's work. We have these special feature selections of work. If you click any one of these, they are a link to a view, like an online exhibition of work. So we've curated or pulled together work from that's still available from the traveling retrospective that University of Oregon held, dry point prints, which are a lesser known aspect of Rick's work, brilliant black and white work, or one color ink on paper, on handmade Japanese paper, really an incredible body of work. Then lithographs and other prints, and then monotypes. So to see Rick's show, we're going to exhibitions. And then down here to Bartow. And then down here is a link that is just the 15 pieces in the show. Please visit the exhibition view here. So follow that link. So
Scroll on down.
Yeah, scroll on down. Okay, there are the works. So you can click on each one of these, and I want to. I'm going to give a little preview. So now you know where we are and how to look at these more. And let's talk about Rick and his relationship with crows, and just animals, the animals of the Northwest in general. For those of you who don't know, his uncle was a real armchair naturalist, is what Rick called him. And Rick's father passed away when he was 5, and his twin brother was really a great father figure with him, for him, and taught him about watching the natural cycles of the day and the animals, that when the owl would fly by, or a heron or an eagle would fly by, there would always be a crow. And Rick was attentive to the crow and the coyote, the raccoon, the rascal, the symbols of prankster, trickster, rascal, joker, because of there are just so many myths and stories in literature that the trickster or the jester plays such a key role, and the raven in the Pacific Northwest is definitely a prankster and a central figure. And Rick just loved watching their character. There's a piece of art that Rick was really fond of, and it was this screen. This Wilder, when is this screen from?
Oh, it's, let me see here.
This is from the Seattle Art Museum.
Yeah,
it's a massive 6-panel screen. I mean, here the museum focuses on it. So if you just search Seattle Art Museum Crow screen, you'll find it. But Rick and I visited this. Rick talked about always going to visit this piece. And so this, when I met Rick in '92, and we had both seen this screen and talked about it, and I was, both William Jameson and I were keenly aware that Rick loved ravens and was especially thoughtful in his presentation of ravens and respectful of them. He gave them all the facets of their personality, just like this screen does. So one little funny story, kind of funny, is that in '94, Rick was on his way to Japan. There was an exhibition being planned, which we'll talk about more. And it was going to be 2 galleries in Tokyo and then in northern Japan in Niigata Village. And Rick was there as an invited artist by Naoki Sakamoto, the very famous papermaker from Tokyo. And there would be 2 gallery shows, and then all the artwork would go to a community exhibition space in Niigata Village. And William and I were like, well, we're going to send Rick's best work. We're going to send crows. So Rick said, would you guys just handle this and pick the work and send it to Japan? So it was back in the days before digital, we didn't have email. We had slides, and we were like, this costs a lot of money to send a Polaroid photo to Japan. And we just knew we were sending his really good work to Japan for the exhibition. So we packed up all these ravens and we sent them off to Tokyo. And we got this letter or a phone call that was like, in broken English, is this a joke? Is there more work coming? And William and I really were not so aware that we were not aware at all, really, that the crow was also a portent of an omen of death, or not really great luck. So we tried to encourage them to laugh and put some good humor in it. And we talked about this screen and how important ravens and crows were for Rick. And I think we must have sent off some other things to Japan for that show. And I doubt any of the crows ever sold in Japan, but Rick never let me down for that. So there, a roundabout story of crows in Japan. And Japan was central to Rick's life. He really loved his time in Japan and the people he met from Japan. And one of his several key collaborators in his mature life were Japanese. So I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. So I'm going to go back to.
I have a couple of great quotations from Rick about both crows and ravens in relation to their presence in Northwest Coast stories in particular. And
while you read those, I'm going to kind of scroll through some images.
Okay, great. These are just very brief. These are brief. Okay. He said on the crow, he wrote, "Sacred fool, keep away from our daughters and get your sticky fingers out of that picnic basket." So that would be the crow as trickster, as sort of like funny, malign, but fun-loving sort of character. And he also described the raven as crazy with too much knowledge of both the light and the darkness. And I think that that points to some of Rick's heavy personal association with Raven and Crow, because Rick absolutely loved life. He loved people. He was so grateful for his health when he had it, and he also had seen some terrible things. He had some tragedies in his life, losing his wife Julie in 1999, and his experience serving in Vietnam. So he really felt the pull of the dark and the light. And it came out in his work in incredible ways that we'll see here.
Well, thank you. Those are really great quotes, both of them, and they show a kind of like the second quote, the light and the dark. Rick talked about the trickster and the crow, and said, we learn as much from them by what they do as what they choose not to do.
Yeah.
And confounding at times, but part of the lessons from the trickster. So let's start out with this piece, 1988. So Wilder, you briefly mentioned Rick had tragedy in his life. His father dying when he was 5. He's drafted immediately after college graduation to go to Vietnam, and he went to Vietnam and came back with PTSD. In the 70s were a wash of alcoholism and self-flagellation. He made art, but he burned it all in the 70s. And then in 1979, he got sober. And it was thanks to Walt, Elder Old Bear Walt, on the Siletz reservation that was right near Rick's house, that really helped Rick get clean, get sober, get healthy and strong, and walk what Rick called the Red Road, the Red Dirt Road. So this print is 1988, and that's just 9 years after Rick got sober. So Rick was, in 1979, he realized it was just time to make art, get a job, clean up his life, and he did. And he started making art, and he joined William Jameson's gallery in 1986 or 85. And he had already had some museum successes, some small community house exhibition successes around the country. And so here, 1988 is a print that he was invited to go to Brandywine Workshop, which is in Pennsylvania. And that is a print workshop that was founded as an African-American, as a Black community fine art studio. And what a great, exciting thing for Rick to go from Newport to Philadelphia, and he got to go print this. So this is a 3-color lithograph, black, blue, and red. And it's full of iconography that Rick used throughout his life. The transformation of both male or animal and the human, the presence of the hands, whether it's laying on of hands or the supplicant, the prayer, the gestures of dance. Rick was keenly aware of symbols of gesture from dance and theater and masks. So you'll see, this is hard to find the detail in it, but the face has an eye that's somewhat gouged out. It's both a man's face and a raven. And there are so many hands around this. And there are the rib cage marks, erasure. He really goes into this lithograph like a drawing. And so you see like the real mature gestures of Rick's drawn line and mark forming here and in a lithograph. So
I think we can point out too, as you said, Charles, we could talk about so much of Rick's work through this one single piece. But one aspect that really stands out is the hands hand tracings. Rick would claim that he could not draw hands, and believe that believe that if you will. But I mean, look at the details in that raised hand. That's very articulate. It was also a reference. Rick was fascinated with cave art, and hand tracings were so present in that. So we'll see those in many other pieces that we look at here this morning.
You're right. Rick was keenly aware of his position as a 20th century artist, but his feet were in the river with the artists that had placed their hands on the cave wall thousands of years ago. And Rick has these great comments about being in line with the ancestors who would gather coyote tail fur and rub blueberry pigment together and dab that on the wall and make a flute out of a bird bone and play music, and which Rick was as well a great musician, a guitar player and singer, and so he knew he was grateful. He acknowledged that he probably wasn't making everything originally, that he was looking to a lot of other artists for inspiration, whether they're thousands of years old or they're working contemporary across the continent or across the city. So being a part of the artist community, both ancient and now, Rick was aware of that. So yeah, this has a lot of great subtle form that comes out of the erasure. And I was pointing out like the eye almost looking like it's gouged out, but Rick did built a lot of imagery by either omitting, by removing, or layering over previous imagery. And there are a lot of images, a lot of Rick's work you'll see where there's a band or something over the eyes, there are scratches through the eyes. And Rick talked about the work that he made in the 70s while the worst of his PTSD was raging, and that he said, he didn't want to burden anybody with seeing the artwork that he made then because it was so rough for him to get through. And so I think in some ways Rick was covering his eyes or trying to unsee some things as well. And he definitely used art he drew himself straight, he said. That's a quote, sober. Well, how about if we go on to the next person,
sure.
Next piece?
Yeah.
Another lithograph, and these are in chronological order. So I hope that we will try to give some chronological perspective, but I know we'll go on some tangents. This is an art history test that I'm putting myself through. As a dealer, a lot of let's just talk about the professional work that we do as dealers. That we're not just a shop that people bring their artwork and we put it up on the wall and then we sell it. We try to really put context to it so that the artist's voice is authentically or respectfully given to the people that encounter the art. And so we do try to encourage the artist to write about the work, to answer questions. We have gallery talks, but as well keeping records. We have an incredible database. Started out with paper. It includes photography of all the artwork. It includes now a digital database where we put details about the exhibition record, when works were included in publications and articles and books. And our digital database is a relatively new technology. And in the old Jameson Thomas gallery days and the first 15 years of my gallery, we really relied on paper books and the file folders with letters and lists, exhibition checklists. So this print has a bit of a mystery to it. And if anybody out there recognizes where this was printed, I've been in discussion with Sheila Coppola, the master printer, who worked with Charles Madsen at Ink on Paper in Seattle. Bartow told me back in 2014 when I was doing some inventory work with him in his studio, he said he printed this and 2 others at Ink on Paper. And Ink on Paper is a very difficult search on the internet, because you get like Office Depot and every print shop and every silkscreen shop, and it's and Charles Madsen is unfortunately now deceased, but Sheila is trying to help me identify where this might have been printed. It does not have a printer's chop on it. It's an edition of 33. This Wilder left the room. This is a we've sold this print. We've sold out of the edition, but still, as a dealer, as Rick's agent and the representative Rick's estate, we still want to put context to where is this really from? Where was it printed? We want to track the exhibitions. So, okay, Wilder, come on back. I don't know what happened. Just took an internet dive.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on to the next one.
Sure.
Okay.
Both side of the tail. Yeah.
1991. This is the first color work in the exhibition as far as chronology. And this one has one of the most lengthy exhibition histories to it. And 1991, Rick was going through an Egyptian phase. And at this same time, Rick was commissioned to do 2 monumental murals for Saks Fifth Avenue, for a shopping center in downtown Portland. And they were like 18 feet tall. And those are now unfortunately destroyed, but they had these profile, they had the work in that the public works were hawks, and they were female hawks. And you might see symbolic breasts in this raven profile. There is a hat-like form on the top of the crow, really kind of an Egyptian hat. Rick titled a number of pieces for Egypt, Egyptian hawk, Egyptian this, and he was looking at pharaoh's hats and the profile, those kind of regal profiles. But then you also see this upside down triangle, and that is Rick's recognition of the dust devils of the Willamette Valley. His wife, Julie, her family lived in Dallas, so outside of Corvallis, and in that whole farming community. And Rick and Julie and Booker and Rhonda would drive over to see their family. And Rick said every time they drive across the fields, there would be a dust devil. Wilder, maybe you want to say a few things about this drawing.
Well, I think if you're able to see this piece in person, one of the most wonderful aspects of it is the sort of interplay between the soft pastel color part, these earth tones, and this like hard kind of burnished graphite sheen that's present on the head of the crow here, and that changes and catches the light as you move around it. So it's really a nice experiential piece as well.
The black head is graphite. And a lot of people ask about Rick's charcoal, or a lot of people have said charcoal, but Rick did not use charcoal. He was very adamant about that. The black would be maybe maybe pastel, but really he preferred to make his blacks with graphite because it was silvery and iridescent like a crow.
Right.
I want to point out this is also a male-female transformation piece, and Rick was aware of duality in our life, in his life, and Rick did a number of self-portraits as both male and female gender aspects. But I mean, if you look closely, this is both a male and female body, and it's the face is not Rick's self-portrait, but Rick is drawing this about archetypes as well. This work was featured in the traveling retrospective, Things You Know But Cannot Explain. And so it is a nice, it's a really fine, rare piece from '91, but is included in the exhibition catalog. So if you have that, you can find it there. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. Come on, Pat. Okay, 1992. Now we're moving into a period where Rick's friendships with artists around the country are really blossoming, and his friendship with Joe Feddersen was. I'm trying to remember. Joe has a lot of stories about Rick. They had such a good friendship, and their artwork was very different. But early, Joe was doing fish heads and fish work, and Rick just really responded to that. And Joe was instrumental in introducing Rick to a lot of artists, both in Seattle. Joe had his studio down in Belltown. A lot of good stories about Joe's early career in Belltown or in Seattle. And Joe eventually got a faculty position at Evergreen State College and invited Rick to come print. And Joe, being a master printer, I mean, he is known internationally for his print working and for his experimental print work. I mean, Joe studied with incredible printmakers at University of Wisconsin at Madison and Glen Alps in Seattle at UW. And so Joe was working with this waterless lithography and silography and collagraphs and monotypes, and this is a really big print. So I mean, the paper is 44 by 33 inches, and a solitary raven with this red, almost ghost-like figure hovering over it. But Joe helped Rick print this, or facilitated Rick printing this at the Evergreen State College.
This piece was also on view at the residence of the U.S. ambassador to Bulgaria in 2013 through 2015 through the State Department's Art and Embassies program, which was a huge honor for Rick and for all of us.
Yeah.
And, yeah. This piece, for being such a relatively spare composition, has just exquisite body language. There's this sort of slightly stooped posture that the crow has, and that sort of ghostly red hovering face of another crow, which I don't know if people can see it from this image, but it's both circled and X'd through. Yeah.
Rick, in college, Rick worked at a print shop. I mean, he studied printmaking. He made prints in college. But then when he came back from Vietnam, it was his print professors. Rick studied at Western Oregon University in Monmouth. And when he came back from Vietnam, he said just kind of a hollow shell of himself. It was the print professors, his art professors, Dan Cannon, Jim Mattingly, and others, that they really pulled Rick in and protected him, took care of him, got him a job. Rick worked at a commercial print shop, and Rick said he would do anything he could as a drunk to, to keep that job, but he was still, I mean, they just wanted to help keep Rick whole. But Rick was keenly, even through that, Rick was keenly aware of print processes and just he graphically picking up on what the master printer would do in a commercial print shop, whether it's registration marks or the crimp mark around the edge of a plate. And Rick kept a frame or crimp mark in a lot of works, and this one has it. So this is the plate size that you can kind of see as the red outline. And Rick used that as a graphic device in a lot of work. So he puts a frame around the work, even though it's on a piece of paper or canvas. He would make this framework. So you can see that in a lot of phases of Rick's work.
Yeah. So
Rick's work was shown in a number of embassies over the years. New Zealand, the McCormick, Mr. McCormick was an ambassador from Oregon to New Zealand, and Rick's work was installed at the ambassador's house there.
Malaysia as well.
In Malaysia. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And now at Papua New Guinea as well. New embassy that's under construction there.
Yeah, they bought the State Department bought that work for that.
That's right.
Embassy. Okay, let's move on because I'm paying a little bit of attention to time.
Sure.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, this is here we're getting to 94, and Rick's choices of colors he was known as a colorist, and Rick was often spontaneous in picking color. He had, if any of you visited his studio, he always had tables, several of them, like left and right, and behind him or wherever. He'd move them around, and they were covered with boxes of pastels, both used and fresh. And he would draw with his left hand, he would draw with his right hand, and he would just throw down the pastel and pick up another one without even looking. So at times he just knew he needed a new color to start another phase of a drawing. And it wasn't always like, oh, I should put yellow here because it will complement brown. It was just, it's what he grabbed. But in a sense, it was a real brave and trusting practice for Rick. Wilder, do you have any thoughts on this? This is a subtle drawing. There are a lot of details that are hard to see on this.
It is. It's such an interesting composition too. This big, open, empty wing shape, and this sort of the other oval shape that's behind the crow's head seems to be sort of shielding it in some way. And some people who have seen this drawing have not quite got the crow beak in there, seeing this as a much more abstracted piece. And this also has, as Charles mentioned, the Rick's graphic use of marks from printing. This has lots of little erasures, broken lines, and marks to kind of conduct your eye around this piece as you're standing in front of it. And Rick really loved to do that, to sort of describe a path for looking at his work. There are also little broken lines too, and Rick had said at times, described these little marks as being made by raven's beak. So I think that's certainly relevant to this.
Yeah, yeah, he talked about that. I want to point out a couple of graphic symbols, if you will, like this right here. Rick was using, so Rick being from Newport Bay, Yaquina Bay, there were everyone, there were people all around him that were either in timber or fishing. And so they were really hard working people that Rick just said, I mean, he learned so much from them, and he knew that they risked their lives. So here is a boat, this boat shape. But it also, Rick used it on some occasions as a clam digging shovel. It was Rick's uncle that would bring Rick out to the mud flats in Yaquina Bay to go clam digging. But then eventually, and Rick's uncle also introduced Rick to traditional ways of the Wiyot and Yurok spiritual practices, and that the sweat lodge was part of their life. And this shape is in essence a sweat lodge. So Rick had said to me, Rick has done a number of very abstract pieces that were, I mean, just this shape, this earlier in the crow's side of the tail drawing, this almost, it was rounded like a pharaoh's hat, but now it's pointed. But Rick did a lot of work with boats. He knew people that lost their lives on boats. And it was an integral part of the community. So the boat, there were a couple of symbols that Rick used early on, readily, that he put into these drawings: boats, ladders, and houses. Rick was building his family with Julie. Rick was keenly aware throughout his life, I mean, his adult life, after getting sober, of living a spiritual life that brought some enlightenment. And so the ladder being a very archetypal symbol of trying to get to another place. So this is a really beautiful piece. I love the colors in it too, and that arc. I hadn't thought about that, Wilder, that this arc is almost like the halo that Rick has drawn, an arc around heads and faces quite often. So let's move on from 1994. We've got still got 20 years to.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to pick it up. It's 11:50. Okay, another drawing. Here's a male, female, and this is this is the onset of a real tough time for Rick's life. I mean, and you can see it in his face. This is Julie, his wife, Julie Swan, who was a bass player in their band, in the Cyrano and the Snub-Nosed Dullards and Rowdy Bob Howdy and all their bands, which they changed their names often, and they had a lot of people stepping in. But Julie and Rick were bandmates as well as husband and wife, and they had the most incredible relationship, and they have the most incredible son together and daughter, Rhonda and Booker. But Julie, in 1999, passed away from breast cancer. So this is the onset of that phase of Rick's sorrow at the loss of Julie. And it is, you see this, there's a dress, there's a female body, but and then Rick's face in there too. So it's him, and like holding out the hands like that is like, it's like, I give up, or, giving in. It's how I see this. It's a really incredible piece, and I wanted it in the show because it shows the depth of Rick's connection to the Raven, that even in a time of such great loss and sorrow, the Raven has some meaning to him. It's present.
Yes, and I'll just say quickly, this sort of has a relationship with the first 1988 lithograph that we looked at, wherein the human face has a mouth open, possibly in distress, and the crow or raven is in profile and sort of taciturn and a solid presence. Mm-hmm. And this time it's very much Rick there. And so I might interpret that as as the raven's gift, some sort of stability and solidity in such a terrible time.
Yeah. Okay, I'll advance to the next. So here is 2003. And I mentioned Rick's show in Japan in 1994, and Rick had Rick was brought there thanks to Paper Now. Paper Now is this incredible paper shop in Tokyo. So if any of you have an opportunity to go to Tokyo, you've got to go see Paper Now. It's so fine. There are Bartow gates. The front doors are carved by Rick Bartow, and so Naoki Sakamoto invited Rick. And Rick was introduced then to the dealer Toshiaki Yanagisawa, and then as well to Seiichi Hiroshima. I'm trying to type that up to put a banner on the front.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Rick was, oh my God, I keep creating the banner, but it doesn't show. Oh, there we go. Well, anyway, Wilder, why don't you say a few things?
Oh, yes, sure. Well, maybe this is what you were going to say, Charles, but we definitely want to give a shout out to Seiichi Hiroshima, who Rick ended up collaborating with as a master printer, Tokyo-based master printer for decades. Their collaboration was called Moon and Dog Press, and you can see some of the chops that they used for their collaborations in this piece. And this say if you're out there, hi.
Yeah, hello Seiichi. I think he's on vacation out in rural Japan right now. But this piece is sold, and it's a very special piece of paper as well. I hope when you come to visit the show, everybody, that you'll look at the paper closely. This was when the pulp is wet. It has been placed on a giant plank of wood that is ancient and has great grains on it. So like a gently sandblasted, or like it's been washed up on the ocean. There are these grains of the wood that show in this piece of paper. So Seiichi Hiroshima was, he also had a gallery in Tokyo. And so in 1994, when Rick visited for his first trip and first show there, there were the dual shows at Yanagisawa Gallery and at Seiichi's former gallery, which was Azabu Kasamicho in the Roppongi. And Sei was teaching at Musashino Art College off and on, and he had done printmaking for lots of Japanese artists, including Yayoi Kusama. And Sei could tell that Rick was just always wanting to draw on something or fiddle and doodle, and I mean, not doodle, but Rick was always doing something. So Sei said he gave him these plates, gave him copper and zinc plates, and a big nail. And so this is a couple years later in 1998, when I went back with Rick to Tokyo. So Rick started doing prints with Seiichi then in 1998. So this piece, 2003, it's also a bird bundle, and it's the raven skull. And Rick did a lot of work that had the skull, the spirit presence, and this is in essence an homage to Frank LaPena, and then Fritz Scholder, two artists who were enormously influential to Rick, that did imagery of cloaked, wrapped, blanketed figures. And Rick added in the skull of the bird, the so important animal for Rick. So let's move on.
Yes.
A monotype, another monotype, printed by Seiichi. And this is very closely related to a title work, the title work of the show, Crow's Instructions, which we'll see next. So in this, I think also I wanted to point out the screen at the Asian Art Museum, the Seattle Art Museum in Seattle, because of the silhouettes, the stencil-like shape that Rick did, but he made them each unique, whether he cut some off and put legs at the bottom, human legs, turned them in with arms, put human faces on them. Some are the full body. He made so many of these cutout stencils of the raven so they could be in conversation and flocking together. So this is a piece in the drawer, not necessarily on the wall yet, but it was one that we felt had strong relation. Strong relation to this piece, the title piece. And Wilder, I've got this one pulled up, so I will read. And for those of you who've looked at Rick's work closely, this one has a presage of graphic mark. It's Rick giving an homage to his professor from Western, Jim Mattingly, these small geometric shapes that Rick stamped. The alphabet, Rick was looking at Jasper Johns, at James Mattingly, and putting these, whether it's the stamped or written, repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, but then as well the stencil, the raven humans, and so this is 2007, and Rick wrote as a journal on the side of this. Rick just kind of wrote stream of consciousness. The two of them were looking south, and I was looking at my shoes deep in gone dead train thoughts of the morning and coffee and images of whatever presented itself to me at 7:46 a.m. in the little seaside community that constitutes why I stay here in this condo creating mess that used to be beautiful. When I looked out above, they were looking. I saw what I saw, and maybe it was what they saw, and perhaps not, but it was illuminated in the morning January sunrise, and it was moving fast into the east wind, into the sun, and I could hear it as it goes by. So in 2007, that Rick was still living back in South Beach on Idaho Point, on the land that his parents and grandparents had landed on and lived in. So Rick was third generation to live there. It was a quiet place right next to the water, and really Rick had a beaver dam with a pond behind one side of the property. He had a studio out in the middle of a wetland. And it was a really idyllic, bucolic place. You could hear the foghorn from the port where the ships would come through the spit to get into Yaquina Bay. But all the weather cycles were present, and the animals, the birds were really present. And there was this condo being built right across the street, this big, ugly apartment-like condo building. It was a real scourge on the view down there. So it was soon after that Rick left Idaho Point. So here we go. Crow's Instructions. I think he was feeling antagonized by the crows at that point, or the bigger picture of crows with that the condo builders. Okay, so we'll move on. So now we get to 2012. And the selection of this show was not like, let's get one from every year, or let's have a one single thread of the aspect of the crow, but it was just the crow. We chose really what we felt were really strong works and indicative of a period or a phase in Rick's life. And 2012, he painted this while the monumental sculpture was being completed and installed up in Washington, D.C. In 2010, Rick received a commission from the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian to create a monumental sculpture. It includes two poles. They're not totem poles. They are just pole sculpture, modern pole sculpture, and very much inspired by carver friends from around the world, from New Zealand, from the Northwest. But Rick also just lived among the trees, so these tall, towering sentinels of trees were a graphic presence for him. So I'm bringing this up because I want to point out the gouge marks, the feathers, if you will, these blue and red rainbow-colored feathers that in the sculptures that Rick created, there's an adze mark that it's like a digging in that is repeated over and over, and it creates an electric fluttering image on the surface of the sculpture, and when light hits it, and shadow. And Rick was also giving, in some sense, a nod to his great friend Harry Fonseca, the painter from California, who did a lot of polka dots and a lot of animals with rain and polka dots and dots. But here's a dog and crow together, and he called this one Bop, which he said he just liked the word Bop. And Rick would use the word Bop when he'd be like, hey, get on the phone with Rick. What are you doing? What's up? And he's like, oh, I'm just bopping around. Wilder, do you have anything you want to say about this?
The form of this crow has always been so kind of mysterious to me. It's not necessarily typical for Rick. And it's the kind of attentiveness of the dog with the pricked up ears and the canted head seem like the dog feels that the crow is an unusual presence too.
The dog face is really animated. Just that one little blue dot of the eye. It's like,
Right, very much so.
Pinky ears. Okay, let's move on because we are. I'm over time.
Okay.
But thank you for joining us, everyone. It's just after noon, but I want to finish going through the rest of the work so that if anybody who has the endurance will look, because there are people that just can't make it into the gallery, and so I don't want to shortcut. Okay, we're gonna go. Okay.
Great.
13. In 2012 and 13 was also a time of a great confidence for Rick. He had completed a handful of massive public sculptures, the one for the Smithsonian, and just prior to that, Western Oregon University had commissioned him with Nancy Blair to create a sculpture for their fitness center, and or as Rick would call those places, the Rec Center, WRECK. So Rick and Nancy created a salmon swarm a school of salmon swimming across a wall made out of wood and glass. So if you can get to the campus at Monmouth, it's a really beautiful installation. So here in 2013, Rick is feeling very happy about those big public works, but also at that time, Jill Hartz, director of University of Oregon's Jordan Schnitzler Museum of Art, had offered to organize a retrospective of Rick's work. And so we embarked on that with Danielle Knapp and Larry Fong wrote a great essay. But it was a huge effort of reviewing Rick's entire career with Danielle and Jill. And Rick, we just asked Rick so many questions, and we would spend so much time, you too, Wilder, looking at the work in the back drawers, developing the exhibition. And so Rick was excited for the onset of that. And this is from a series of crows that are they're kind of outlandish, and their feet are huge. They're just like terrifying, but they're hysterical too. I mean, look at this face.
Right. Yeah, this crow feels less like some of the crows of myth and story than kind of a crow of actual everyday experience. This sort of open, squawking, kind of coming down all of a sudden with these grasping, gangly talons.
Get your sticky paws out of my picnic basket.
Right, that's right. That's right. And, folks who have come in to see the show so far, this work in particular brings out their own crow encounter stories.
Wilder, can you read that quote again? The
Oh, yes. That is, "Sacred fool, keep away from our daughters and get your sticky fingers out of that picnic basket."
This is from a statement written by Rick. So
yes.
He knew. He knew. Okay, we'll cruise on to the next one. We've just got.
One other thing to note about that is that was from the last group of drawings that Rick brought us. I think we received that in June of 2013. Rick had his significant stroke at the end of that summer. So there is to look at this work and works from this time. There's a definite line between works on this side of the stroke and the work that he produced on the other side.
Thank you. That is incredible to point out. John Addison from Chiaroscuro Gallery in Santa Fe had visited in the early summer and picked this work. Rick made this work specifically for his show in Santa Fe. And then Rick and I were supposed to be there in August of 13 for Indian Market. And it was on that, and Rick, the week before the market, Rick just said, "I'm not feeling right. I'm not going to go to Santa Fe." And so I went to Santa Fe without him. And there was the show with Chiaroscuro, and it was the Sunday night of the closing night of the market weekend that Rick had his stroke. We can talk about that for just a moment. A lot of you know about it, but Rick had aphasia was the main side effect of the stroke. He didn't have paralysis, but he had language and speech problems afterwards, and it was a cognitive, if you will. He still could play guitar. He could still draw. His stamina, of course, was daunted because a stroke does have physical impact to your body that's very serious. But Rick did change. I mean, he had to learn language. He couldn't read the same way. He had lost all of the songs from that he had written. And Rick was a song writer. He played several times every week throughout his life and played these songs from memory. And so after this work, song, word, chant, those become prevalent themes in Rick's work. But we'll also see a greater loosening of Rick's gesture and the way he depicted and drew his work. He gave a lot of credit to his speech therapist and said she encouraged him, you don't have to relearn things the same way. You can do it totally different now. And Rick was like, oh yeah, right. And it made such sense to Rick, and he just went for it. Rick had always been experimental, but it's a distinct change.
Yeah, that's right.
Wilder, thank you. So, okay, this is 2014. It's a modest scaled sculpture called Horrible Crow. I've always loved that title. This one has some really gnarly teeth. This is, in 2014, he really did not have the physical strength to make large scale sculpture anymore. So we chose this one because it's a crow, but that he made a few modestly scaled sculpture in this time, but he never picked up sculpture in the same way that he had before his stroke. It just was harder to manage the wood and to carry the weight. But he did go on to make monumental paintings and drawings after the stroke. That's the one thing which I was so astonished by, that that Rick, the day that we sprung him free from the hospital after his stroke in 2013, he said, take me to the studio. So Bill Avery and I took him to the studio, and he signed a few pieces that he had finished, and he just kind of put his hands on everything. He was like, okay, I'm ready to do it again. And then he started ordering huge scale canvas and paper and volumes of acrylic paint and pastel, and the scale that he worked in became huge. And we don't include any monumental works in this show. It's somewhat of a modest scale show, but I think a really strong collection of 15 works. So this one, it shows Rick's humor of the horrible crow, and it is gnarly, those sharp teeth. Rick's sculpture always did have the larger sculpture had a roughness to them, or I shouldn't say always, but there were many threads of Rick's sculpture that were rough. Anything more on the sculpture, Wilder?
Well, it's about mask size, and it's fairly minimally carved. Just the circle of wood with the carved out circles for eyes, and minimal sort of planing maybe on the beak, and it's just this sort of perfect little hat or strip of wood along the top that's attached with dowels, and the teeth are all sort of like matchsticks. So it's and the bark is intact. There's lichen, a little bit of moss clinging to it. So it's it's very, very close to the wood, to the tree that it once was.
A couple of things to point out. Let's just linger on this piece for a moment, if you will. Indulge me, but Wilder, you mentioned the mask making, and that was an early part of Rick's work. He was deeply, you'll see Rick draw and paint masks throughout his life, and it wasn't theater, but ritual and ceremony. The masks of the Pacific Northwest coast nations were extremely important to Rick. The spiritual ceremonies, as well the ceremonial masks, the dance masks from Mexico. Rick had a lifetime friendship with Rene Bustamante, who had been a curator at the Anthropology Museum in Mexico City and lives in Oaxaca. And Rene Bustamante was so helpful with giving Rick information, and they just had a great friendship. Rene was a scholar on dance masks from Mexico, as well. The masks of Japan. If you look at some of Rick's early masks, they look like Japanese masks. And so putting on the mask was or wearing a mask was, that was a lifelong symbol for Rick, and taking off the mask as well. Like there's a great article early on, I think it's from the Newport Times Tribune, the Newport newspaper, that is Man Behind the Mask, or Man Behind the Mask. So there, Rick's engagement with masks was deep, and there were early ones that he would write a poem on the back. So if any of you have a early Rick Bartow mask at home, take it off the wall and look at the back of it. It might have a poem on it. And one of Rick's early great accomplishments was a major salmon mask that is in the collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Had traveled with the show with Shared Visions, curated by Margaret Archuleta from the Heard Museum, and then this mask eventually ended up at the NMAI in New York and DC. So the mask tradition, yes, extremely influential. Okay, now I'm going to step to 2014. Even though this is a time when Rick was in therapy, physical or speech therapy, and really coming to terms with his congestive heart failure and the effects of the stroke, it was 2014. The spring of 14 is when the very first World Renewal ceremony happened on Dilawat Island, also known as Indian Island, in Humboldt Bay. The Wiyot, Rick's tribe. Rick was a registered member of the Wiyot, and so for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a California coast tribe. And the gold rush was horrendously devastating. It was atrocious what happened during the gold rush to the native people all throughout California. And the Wiyot tribe in 1860, during the World Renewal ceremony, which is their most sacred day or ceremony, and it is a time to replenish and re-energize the earth. And the angry white settlers came and massacred elders and children on Dilawat Island, and it devastated the Wiyot tribe. And Rick's family and many Wiyot were then in diaspora. They ran for their lives, and which is what Rick's family did eventually after that. And they left the Humboldt Bay area to go to Newport Bay area years after that massacre. So in 2014, Rick was able to participate in that first World Renewal ceremony. It was the first one held on Dilawat Island since 1860. So that it was an incredibly important event in Rick's life and in the whole life of the Wiyot community. And that hat is this small hat on top of this horrible crow. It is, the Wiyot did not use masks. They did not, Rick was very clear about, they did not carve masks or use masks in ritual, but they did wear hats. And if you go to Wiyot country, you'll see a woven hat. A lot of people wear them. So this could be the woven Wiyot hat, and Rick had one. So there's a little bit of iconography dissecting on this piece. And I appreciate that people are indulging us in this conversation. Wilder, I can tell you're distracted there. Maybe you've got, if you need to leave,
oh, no.
Wild at the gallery.
Quite all right.
You okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we have just a few more pieces left. So,
and
2014, this is a very large piece, 50 inches high by 45. Rick Wilder, maybe why don't you talk about this for a moment, because I need a drink of water.
Yes, sure. I think we can sort of talk about these next two in tandem, GC3 and GC6, both from 2014. And even after his 2013 stroke, Rick had this astonishing amount of energy, even though he may not have always seemed like it in those days. What he put towards making these large drawings and paintings was really incredible. This GC series, there were 7 drawings, and Bill Avery, one of the trustees of the Richard E. Bartow Trust, and a longtime friend of Rick's, has a great photo of these 7 pieces in their very earliest stages in Rick's studio. Rick would often work on multiple pieces at a time. He had these 7 large sheets of paper taped up in his studio. His first move had been to go down the line with a brush dipped in black tempera and paint out either dark black negative space or dark black positive space in these wonderful long-legged crow forms. And he then went through and filled them in. And Charles, this is I love this part of it. When Rick brought these into us, they all said GC at the top, or at some place in them. And Charles, you said, Rick, what's GC? And and he answered as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's Great Crow. So he was very, very pleased with how these turned out.
Great Crow. Well, Rick put initials on a lot of work throughout his life. There were MG for Morris Graves, or FS for Fritz Scholder, FL for Frank LaPena, KK for Kata Kolwitz. I mean, he did a lot of homage, and I was trying to think, like, who in his life has the initial GC? And so I was like, is there, who's named GC? This one is really special, this Great Crow 6. It, again, is a female. I see breasts in it up here. And maybe that's just me looking, maybe that says a lot about me. I don't know. But this, again, the legs are fantastic on both of these. Also, they have these great long claws that are, able to go in and snatch snacks out of picnic baskets.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
These are also tempera. So this is a phase where Rick was both drawing with pastel on the paper, but I mean, devil may care, Rick was putting tempera on the paper. And we keep these all flat in a flat portfolio. But they are, Rick loved the chalky, matte, opaque quality of tempera and gouache. And he often used gouache and watercolor and tempera on a flat panel, but on smaller work. But at this scale, it was really effective. And he could draw over the black tempera with graphite, and it really shines. It really, really, really shines when he does that. Okay, we have just a few more, and then we'll be wrapping up, right?
Just one more, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So 2015 in the spring is when the exhibition opened at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art in Eugene at University of Oregon. And it was a huge celebration. And I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people at the opening. And Rick was, everybody wanted to talk to Rick. And there were so many great events that the university filmed. So if you go to the Jordan, if you look on YouTube for videos of Rick, he gave a lot of public presentations around that time, and he did these great videos called A Moment with Rick Bartow, where he walks through the work in the exhibition in the spring of 2015. And he also, the University of Oregon produced a video called The Legacy of Line, and it tracks Rick and Mika Ano, a master printer on faculty at U of O, making a series of dry point prints. And so here is also, I think, the most loosely relevant to the crow, and it's hard to see this and think of crow at first, but it's what he wrote on the back: crow, lungs, heart. And he was in the throes of congestive heart failure at this point. I mean, and it's summer, spring and summer of 2015, all this wonderful celebration of Rick's life, but his health really began to fail significantly. And so it was a bittersweet time. It was very tough for all of us. And Rick's lungs and his heart, he had drawn organs in work before. There are a lot of works that have a heart and lungs in them. But this one, I think the eyes say it all.
Right. Truly facing mortality.
Yeah. This is a modestly scaled work, 18 by 24. Rick did hundreds of paintings that scale, hundreds of paintings smaller than that. And one of those shows, I can't remember what year we had that show, Wilder, that we put up like 70 small paintings, 50 paintings. We sold every single one of them.
Yeah.
Sorry to revel in commerce, but that was really, it was so exciting. And Rick got to see that people were like, I want one. And I mean, everybody got one.
Yeah.
Well, Wilder, I think we're at the end of the show.
Yeah.
We still have a few people hanging on there. Thank you all, everybody. Kathleen Faulkner and Joe Cantrell. Hi, Joe. And Gabriel Liston, Casey Wanford, James Willis, Judy Ferdig. I hope you're still on there, Judy. So a lot of great people watching. Thank you so much. And
Marcia. Hi, Marcia.
Marcia is on there. Great. So please, if you want to make an appointment to come see the show, we are keeping it safe with 4 people in the gallery at a time. You can call us or send any of us an email to make an appointment, Tuesday through Saturday, or a special time if you need. And I hope you'll go back and as well look at some of those selections of work that I was trying to explain. If you go to Rick's homepage here on our website and scroll down and go here to the selected dry point prints. It said available works from things you know but can't explain, selected dry point etchings, selected lithographs. Each one of those lines is a viewing room all of its own with lots of artwork in it. And this is not edited for thematic content, or this is just a selected view. We tried to put a lot of the dry points they're a vast series of work Rick did with Seiichi Hiroshima, master printer. There, that's my spiel.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been really wonderful. And, we're going to have more of Rick's work in the future throughout.
Yes,
all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I will. I will. I hope that I'll get to see people in the gallery, and otherwise, we'll see you soon. And we'll sign off with some ravens that swarmed around the gallery. And there's Iggy for us again. Hey, bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye.